I don't need your money, Lila, Ethan shouted, pen slamming the table. I need a wife who doesn't lie to me. Before we dive into this story, I need to know something. If you found out your partner had been hiding something life-changing, would you walk away or fight for them? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if you've ever felt like love was worth fighting for, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. 3 months earlier, the Starbucks drive-through line wrapped around the building like always. It was 7:42 a.m., Manhattan buzzing, horns blaring, men in suits glued to their phones. Ethan Caldwell hated waiting. He checked his Rolex twice. On the radio, a business segment discussed rising tech stocks. His company's name floated through the speakers. Caldwell Innovations poised for another acquisition. He didn't smile. Instead, he stared at the steering wheel, jaw tight. Across the street, a young couple laughed while walking their golden retriever. The woman reached for the man's hand without thinking. Ethan looked away. He hadn't held Lila's hand in weeks. When he finally pulled up to the window, the barista recognized him. "Morning, Mr. Caldwell." "The usual?" "Yeah." His voice was clipped. Triple espresso. No sugar. No softness. As he drove toward his glass tower office, he ignored the text notification lighting up his screen. "Lila, can we talk tonight?" 3 words. His world didn't stop. But something shifted. He didn't respond. Across the city, Lila Bennett Caldwell stood in their penthouse kitchen barefoot, staring at the skyline. The apartment smelled like fresh coffee and lemon cleaner. The housekeeper had come and gone. Everything looked perfect. Felt hollow. Her phone rested on the marble counter. No reply. She told herself not to read into it. Ethan was busy. He was always busy. She walked to the living room where sunlight hit the framed photo from their wedding day. Nantucket shoreline. Wind in her hair. Ethan smiling, not the CEO smile. A real one. She touched the glass gently. "When did we stop being that?" she whispered. The question lingered in the air like dust. Ethan's day unfolded in sharp edges. Boardroom. Screens glowing. Assistants whispering updates. "We can finalize the merger by Friday," his CFO said. "Do it," Ethan replied without hesitation. Decisions were easy in business. Emotions were not. Between meetings, his phone buzzed again. "Lila, please don't ignore me." He exhaled slowly. Was she unhappy? Of course she was. He could feel it. But wasn't this what she signed up for? The long hours? The pressure? The responsibility? He built this life for them. For her. So why did it feel like he was losing her anyway? That night, their penthouse felt colder than usual. Lila stood at the kitchen island chopping basil for pasta. The scent filled the room. Fresh, earthy, grounding. The elevator doors chimed. Ethan stepped inside, loosening his tie. "You're home," she said softly. "Long day." "I figured." Silence stretched between them. Not angry, just tired. She plated dinner. He scrolled through emails at the table. "You good?" he asked, not looking up. The question felt automatic. Empty. Lila sat across from him. "Ethan, do you ever think about slowing down?" He paused, finally looked at her. "What does that mean?" "It means, we barely talk anymore. We're talking now." "That's not what I mean." He set his fork down. "Lila, I'm building something that secures our future. This is temporary." "You've been saying temporary for 3 years. Her voice didn't rise. That almost made it worse. Ethan leaned back. "So what are you saying?" She hesitated. This was the moment. She could tell him everything. About her father. About the fortune. About the safety net Ethan didn't know existed. About the fact that she never needed his billions. But fear wrapped around her throat. If he knew, would he think she married him for strategy? For power? For legacy? "I'm saying I miss you," she whispered instead. The vulnerability flickered across his face. Then disappeared. "I'm right here." But he wasn't. Not really. Later that night, Ethan stood alone on the balcony. The city below glittered like scattered diamonds. He remembered being 8 years old in a cramped Ohio apartment, listening to his parents fight about money. His father left 2 weeks later. Ethan learned something then. If you control the money, you control the outcome. Love leaves. Power doesn't. Behind him, the balcony door slid open. Lila stepped outside, wrapping a cardigan around herself. "It's cold," she said. "I'm fine." She walked closer anyway. For a second, just one, he almost reached for her hand. But pride is quiet and quick. Instead, he said, "We'll take a trip after the acquisition closes." "That's not what I need." "What do you need, Lila?" The question sounded impatient, defensive. She looked at him for a long moment. "Honesty." He frowned. "About what?" She opened her mouth, closed it again. "Nothing." And there it was, the fracture neither of them named. Days passed like this, parallel lives, shared space, separate worlds. At a charity gala the following weekend, cameras flashed as they posed together. "Over here, Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell." Lila smiled perfectly. Ethan's hand rested lightly on her back, barely touching. A reporter asked, "What's the secret to balancing marriage and billion-dollar success?" Ethan answered smoothly, "Mutual support." Lila's smile didn't reach her eyes, because support without truth is just performance. And someone in that ballroom was watching. From a distance, a silver-haired man in a tailored suit stood near the exit, eyes fixed on Ethan. On Lila, he didn't approach, didn't speak, but he saw everything. The distance, the tension, the way Ethan never once truly looked at his wife. The man checked his watch. Soon, he thought. Very soon. 2 nights later, Lila sat alone in the living room scrolling Instagram at 2 a.m. Old college friends posted baby announcements, beach vacations, anniversary tributes. She opened her messages, typed, deleted, typed again. "Dad, I don't know how much longer I can do this." She didn't send it. Instead, she walked to Ethan's office. The door was slightly open, light spilling through. He was asleep at his desk, laptop glowing, tie loosened, still working even in dreams. Her heart cracked just a little more. She stepped inside quietly, draped a blanket over his shoulders. For a moment, she let her fingers brush his hair. He stirred slightly and whispered someone else's name. Not another woman, just one word. "Don't." A plea. From somewhere deep. She froze. Don't what? Don't leave? Don't fail? Don't love him? She would never know. Because the next morning everything would shift. A phone call, a meeting request, and papers printed on thick white cardstock. Neither of them knew it yet, but their collision was inevitable. The call came at 9:17 a.m. Ethan was in his corner office overlooking Fifth Avenue. Yellow cabs moved like pieces on a board. The sky was gray, heavy with snow that hadn't fallen yet. His assistant stepped in. "There's a private call on line 2. Says it's urgent." "I'm in the middle of something." "She said it concerns your wife." That got his attention. He picked up. "This is Ethan." A calm male voice answered. "Mr. Caldwell, my name is Arthur Bennett." Silence. The name meant nothing to him. "I don't have time for—" "You will," the man said gently. "Because I'm Lila's father." Ethan leaned back slowly. "Lila's father passed away when she was young." "No," Arthur replied. He disappeared. The air in the room shifted. Outside, a siren wailed down the avenue. Ethan's jaw tightened. "What is this about?" "I'd prefer to discuss it in person." The Pierre Hotel. 1 hour. The line went dead. At 10:14 a.m., Ethan walked into the Pierre. Old money lived in places like this. Quiet wealth. No flashing signs. Just polished floors and staff who moved without sound. Arthur Bennett sat near the window overlooking Central Park. Silver hair. Navy suit. No tie. He didn't stand when Ethan approached. "You look like a man who built himself," Arthur said. "I did," Ethan replied. Arthur studied him. "That explains it." "Explains what?" "Why you never thought to ask who built her." Ethan didn't sit. Say what you called to say. Arthur folded his hands. Lila never told you because she wanted to be loved without conditions. Loved without what conditions? Without the weight of my name. Ethan felt irritation rise. And what name is that? Arthur's voice stayed steady. Bennett Global Holdings. Ethan froze. That wasn't just a company. It was a shadow empire. Investments across energy, defense, tech. Quiet ownership in half the Fortune 100. Rumors said the family behind it was worth more than some countries. No, Ethan said flatly. Arthur slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents, photos, trust agreements, legal records. Lila, age 6, standing beside Arthur at a private airfield in Montana. Lila, age 12, at a ranch in Wyoming. Lila, teen, leaving. She walked away from all of it, Arthur said. From the jets, the security, the money. She wanted a normal life. Ethan's throat felt dry. She married you because you were the first man who looked at her like she wasn't a balance sheet. Something inside him cracked, but pride held it together. So what is this? Ethan asked. A warning. Arthur shook his head. An observation. Of what? That she's breaking. The words landed harder than they should have. You think I don't see that? Ethan shot back. I think you see everything except what matters. The room felt smaller. Arthur leaned forward slightly. You built a billion-dollar company from scratch. Impressive. But you're about to lose something far more rare. Ethan laughed once. Cold. You don't know my marriage. Arthur's eyes softened. I know my daughter. A pause. Then Arthur said quietly, she asked me last night if love is supposed to feel lonely. The words hit like a punch. For a split second, Ethan pictured Lila alone in their penthouse. The city glowing outside. Her phone in her hand. He pushed the image away. You had no right to contact me, Ethan said. Arthur stood now. No. But I have every right to protect her. From me. From becoming invisible. The sentence hung between them. Arthur picked up his coat. I won't interfere in your marriage. That's her choice. But if you walk away, understand something. Ethan waited. She will never need your money. And then he left. Ethan sat down slowly. The folder was still open. Photos of a life he never imagined. Private estates in Aspen. A 4th of July party on a private island off the coast of Maine. Security details. Headlines carefully avoided. She had never mentioned any of it. Not once. Not during late-night talks. Not during arguments. Not even when they discussed prenups. Especially not then. He remembered that conversation clearly. I don't need protection from you, she had said softly when his lawyers suggested strict terms. He thought it was pride. It was truth. Why didn't she tell him? Because she didn't trust him? Or because she feared exactly this moment? His phone buzzed. Lila. He stared at her name. Did she know her father had called? He didn't answer. That evening, snow finally fell over Manhattan. Soft, quiet, almost gentle. Ethan entered the penthouse. Lila stood by the window watching flakes collect on the balcony railing. It's beautiful, she said without turning around. We need to talk, he replied. She closed her eyes briefly. Okay. He walked to the dining table. Set the folder down. Her shoulders stiffened. Where did you get that? So it's true. Silence. Lila. She turned slowly, and for the first time in their marriage he saw fear in her eyes. Yes, she said. It's true. You're the daughter of Arthur Bennett? Yes. And you never thought to mention that? I wanted you to love me, she whispered. I did love you. Did. Her voice cracked. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Do you have any idea how this looks? How what looks? Like I married into something I didn't know existed. You didn't, she said quickly. I left that world. I left it for you. For me, or to prove something to him? The question cut deep. You think this was a game? She asked. I think you lied. I stayed silent. That's the same thing. Tears filled her eyes but didn't fall. You never asked. she said quietly. The words hit him hard, because it was true. He never asked about her past in detail. He didn't want to seem insecure. He assumed if it mattered, she would tell him. And she assumed if he cared, he would ask. 2 silences. 1 fracture. Snow pressed against the glass. I built everything I have, Ethan said. Every dollar. Every risk. And you just what? Sat on a fortune bigger than mine and watched. It was never about money, she cried. It was about being seen. I see you. No, Ethan. You see what fits your world. Her voice broke now. I was afraid if you knew, you'd look at me differently. And you didn't think I'd feel betrayed finding out from someone else? That landed. They stood there, inches apart, miles away. You met him, she said. Yes. And he thinks I'm making you invisible. Her face crumpled slightly. Am I? The question was small, barely there. Ethan opened his mouth, closed it, because the honest answer scared him. She stepped back. I never needed your money, she said. I needed you. He felt anger rise. But beneath it was something else. Insecurity. Was he ever enough? Or was he just the ambitious husband who thought he was powerful, until he learned he wasn't the biggest name in the room? You should have trusted me, he said finally. And you should have noticed I was drowning, she replied. Silence again. Heavy. Real. Ethan walked to his office. She didn't follow. He opened a drawer, pulled out a folder his lawyer had prepared weeks ago, just in case. He had considered it before, quietly, during sleepless nights, not because he stopped loving her, but because loving her felt like losing control. He stared at the top page. Petition for dissolution of marriage. State of New York. His hand hovered over the pen. Out in the living room, Lila sank onto the couch. Snowlight filled the room. Her phone buzzed once. A message from her father. I'm here if you need me. She didn't respond. In the office, Ethan pressed the pen to paper. Signed. The sound was small, but it echoed. He stepped back into the living room. She looked up. What did you do? She asked softly. He couldn't look at her. I think this is the cleanest way. Clean. Her voice was barely there. He set the papers on the coffee table between them, like a line drawn in ink. Snow kept falling outside. Quiet. Endless. And neither of them understood yet. This wasn't the end of their marriage. It was the beginning of everything breaking apart. But neither of them knew. This was only the beginning. The papers stayed on the coffee table all night. Neither of them touched them again. By morning, the snow had stopped. New York looked washed clean. White rooftops, quiet streets, the kind of calm that lies. Lila woke before Ethan. She walked into the kitchen and made coffee the way she always did, 2 mugs, not 1. Habit is a hard thing to break. When he stepped out of the bedroom, he looked like he hadn't slept. They didn't say good morning. You don't have to rush this, she said finally, nodding toward the living room. I'm not rushing. It feels like you are. He grabbed his coat. I have a board meeting. That wasn't what she meant. He paused at the door. For a second, it looked like he might say something else. He didn't. The door closed. And just like that, they began pretending. At Caldwell Innovations, life moved fast. Assistants walked with tablets in hand. Phones rang. Deals closed. No one mentioned divorce. Ethan stood at the head of the conference table. Screens lit up with charts and numbers. His company was expanding into Chicago. Another office in Austin. A new partnership in Silicon Valley. Strong quarter, his CFO said. Ethan nodded. Strong quarter. Weak marriage. He checked his phone under the table. No messages from Lila. Part of him felt relieved. Part of him hated that relief. When the meeting ended, his best friend and COO, Daniel Reyes, caught up with him in the hallway. You look like hell, Daniel said. Thanks. Something going on? Ethan hesitated. Daniel had been there since the beginning. Since the small office above a deli in Brooklyn. Lila and I are separating, Ethan said flatly. Daniel stopped walking. What? It's not working. Since when? Since I realized I don't know who I married. Daniel studied him. You just found out she's rich. That's the issue. It's not about the money. Then what is it about? Ethan didn't answer right away. It's about trust. Daniel nodded slowly. Did she cheat? No. Did she lie about loving you? No. Then what? Ethan's jaw tightened. She hid something big. Daniel leaned against the wall. Man, you hide too. That hit harder than he expected. I don't hide. You don't talk, Daniel corrected. There it was. Ethan walked away before the conversation could go deeper, because denial feels safer than truth. Across the river in Connecticut, Lila sat at a small cafe near the train station, the kind with chipped mugs and handwritten menus. She used to come here in college. Before penthouses, before galas, before headlines. Her lawyer sat across from her, a kind woman in her 50s. You don't have to fight this, the lawyer said gently. But you should protect yourself. Lila almost laughed. Protect herself? From what? She had more protection than most people on the planet. But none of it mattered. I don't want his money, Lila said quietly. This isn't about money. It never was. She stared out the window as an Amtrak train rushed past. I just wanted him to choose me, she whispered. The lawyer softened. Has he stopped? Lila thought about the look on Ethan's face when he said cleanest way. That wasn't anger. It was fear. He thinks I betrayed him, she said. Did you? I thought I was protecting us. Silence sat between them. In the United States, divorce is paperwork. Court dates, asset division, public records if you're high profile. But the real damage happens before the judge ever signs anything. It happens in kitchens, in hallways, in words left unsaid. That evening, Ethan came home early. The penthouse felt different. Lila's suitcase sat near the couch. Not packed, just open. What's that? He asked. She looked up from the dining table. I thought some space might help. Space. His voice sharpened. You said this was the cleanest way. So you're just leaving? For a few days. Running to your father? The words came out wrong. Harder than he meant. She flinched. I'm not running, she said. I'm breathing. He stepped closer. You think this is easy for me? I don't know what this is for you, she replied. You won't say. I signed the papers, he snapped. That should tell you something. It tells me you'd rather quit than talk. The room went still. He wanted to argue, to defend himself. But deep down, he knew something was off. He wasn't angry because she was rich. He was angry because he felt small. Because her secret proved he didn't know everything. And Ethan Caldwell built his life on knowing everything. You don't understand what it's like, he said quietly. What? To grow up with nothing. To fight for every inch. She walked closer now. I know what it's like to grow up with everything and still feel alone. Their eyes locked. Two different childhoods. Same loneliness. But pride stood between them like a wall. You should have trusted me, he said again, softer this time. You should have trusted that I married you for you. He looked away first. That told her more than words ever could. Later that night, Lila zipped the suitcase. Not because she was certain, but because staying felt like begging. She paused at the door. Ethan. He didn't turn around. If you wanted to fix this, she said, you would have asked me to stay. He swallowed. The words sat heavy in his chest. But he didn't say them. The door closed behind her. The sound echoed. Ethan stood alone in the living room. The divorce papers still on the table. Snow outside had melted into slush. Dirty. Gray. Nothing like the night before. He picked up his phone. Opened her contact. Typed, "Come back." He stared at it. Deleted it. Because pride is a liar. And his was about to cost him everything. 3 days passed. Lila stayed at a quiet waterfront house in Greenwich, Connecticut. Not the massive Bennett estate. Just a smaller property her father kept for privacy. White siding. Wooden dock. The kind of place that looked peaceful from the outside. Inside, it felt like waiting. Back in Manhattan, Ethan buried himself in work. Until Friday morning. His legal team stepped into his office with tight faces. "There's an issue," his attorney said. "What kind of issue?" "Your company's next acquisition, Barton Tech Solutions in Boston? It's partially backed by a silent majority investor." Ethan frowned. "And?" The attorney slid a document across the table. "Bennett Global Holdings." The room went quiet. Ethan's pulse slowed in a dangerous way. "You're telling me," he said carefully, "that my wife's father owns a controlling share in the company I'm about to buy?" "Yes." "And he didn't disclose this?" "It's legal," the attorney replied. "But complicated." Complicated was an understatement. If Ethan pushed the divorce now, headlines would explode. Conflict of interest, power struggle, family warfare between two of the largest private fortunes in the United States. Stocks would shake. Competitors would circle. "This can't go public," Ethan muttered. "It doesn't have to," the attorney said. "But you need to speak with Mr. Bennett. And possibly your wife." Ethan leaned back in his chair. Of course, there was no clean break. Not in business. Not in marriage. That afternoon, Ethan drove to Connecticut himself. No driver. No assistant. Just him on I-95 North, traffic thick near the Bronx. Then thinning as the city faded into trees and coastline. An old country song played low on the radio. Something about lost love and second chances. He almost turned it off. He didn't. By the time he pulled into the gravel driveway of the waterfront house, the sun was dipping low over the Long Island Sound. Lila was sitting at the end of the dock, barefoot, sweater sleeves pulled over her hands. She didn't look surprised to see him. "You found it," she said softly. "It wasn't hard." He stepped onto the dock. The wood creaked under his shoes. The air smelled like salt and cold water. "We need to talk," he said. She gave a small, tired smile. "That's what you said last time." He didn't rise to it. "Your father's company backs Barton Tech." "I know. You knew." "He told me after you left the hotel." "And you didn't think to mention that?" She stood slowly. "I didn't think you'd want to hear from me." He opened his mouth. Closed it. Because she wasn't wrong. "This affects my company," he said. "This affects our life." There it was again. The split. Business versus marriage. Control versus connection. "I'm not here to fight," Ethan said. "Then why are you here?" He hesitated. That was the real question. He could have sent lawyers. Handled it through contracts and back channels. But he drove 2 hours himself. Why? Because part of him was tired of speaking through paper. "The board can't know about the divorce right now," he admitted. "It would create instability." She studied him carefully. "So this is about optics?" "No. It sounds like optics." He ran a hand through his hair. "It's about timing." She shook her head slightly. "You're still choosing business first." "I'm trying to protect what I built." "And what about what we built?" Silence fell between them. Waves tapped against the dock. Somewhere in the distance, a boat engine hummed. "I never wanted your father's money," Ethan said quietly. "I know. I don't want people thinking I married into power." "I know that too." "Then why didn't you trust me with the truth?" She looked out at the water. "Because every man before you did." That caught him off guard. "In college, when people found out who I was, they treated me differently," she said. "Some tried to impress me. Some resented me. No one just stayed normal." She met his eyes. "You were the first man who didn't care." He swallowed. "I cared," he said softly. "Not about my last name." He took a step closer. "I would have stayed." "Would you?" she asked gently. He didn't answer right away, because he wasn't sure. That honesty scared him. The sun slipped lower. Orange light stretched across the water. "I don't want this to end," she said. The words were simple. There. He felt something shift inside his chest. "I don't either," he admitted. The admission felt like stepping onto thin ice. But it was real. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Just stood there, close enough to touch. Not touching. "I'm not asking you to stay because of the board," she said quietly. If you want me to stay, it has to be because you choose me. He looked at her hands. Cold. Slightly shaking. He wanted to take them. He didn't, because fear still had a voice. I need time, he said. Her expression changed. Not angry, just hurt. Time for what? To figure out if I can live with this. With what? With not being the strongest one in the room. There. The truth. It hung between them. Raw. She stepped closer now. Close enough that he could feel her breath in the cold air. I never needed you to be stronger than my father, she said. I needed you to be strong enough to love me. The words landed deep. He felt the crack in his armor widen. She saw it. The doubt. The insecurity. The boy from Ohio who hated feeling small. And it terrified her. Because if he couldn't face that part of himself, nothing would change. Headlights appeared at the top of the driveway. A black SUV. Security. Her father's. Arthur stepped out slowly. He didn't approach right away. Just watched. Watched the space between them. The silence. The almost. Ethan noticed him. This is between us, Ethan said quietly. I know, Lila replied. Arthur stayed near the house. Close enough to protect. Far enough to respect. I don't want to lose you, Ethan said finally. Then don't. The answer was simple. The choice wasn't. The wind picked up slightly, brushing her hair across her face. Without thinking, Ethan reached out and tucked it behind her ear. A small gesture. Familiar. The first touch in days. Her breath caught. So did his. But touch isn't the same as commitment. And both of them knew it. Because love without courage is just comfort. And comfort was no longer enough. She saw it then, the fracture in his armor. And it terrified her. Because if he didn't break it open himself, the next truth that surfaced might shatter them for good. Have you ever been stuck with someone who made you feel too much? Tell me what happened. Arthur's SUV disappeared down the driveway. The sky over the Long Island Sound turned deep blue. The last of the sun slipped away. Ethan and Lila stood on the dock, close but unsure. I don't want him here, Ethan said quietly. He's not here for you, Lila replied. He's here because he thinks I'm breaking. Are you? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked back toward the house. Ethan followed. Inside, the place felt warmer than the dock, but not by much. A lamp glowed in the corner. The room smelled faintly of cedar and ocean air. Lila sat on the couch. I left when I was 18, she said suddenly. Ethan stayed standing. My father wanted me groomed for leadership. Board meetings, investment calls, private tutors. I was supposed to inherit everything. And you didn't want it. I wanted a normal life. A dorm room, student loans, a job interview where no one recognized my name. She gave a soft, almost embarrassed smile. I worked at a coffee shop in Boston one summer. Wore a name tag that just said Lila. No last name. Ethan pictured it. Her behind a counter. Simple. Free. When I met you, she continued, you didn't care where I came from. You cared where you were going. He looked down. That's what I loved about you. He sat across from her now. So you hid it. I protected it. From me. From losing you. Silence. The words were clean. Honest. But they didn't erase the ache. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. When my dad left, he said quietly. He didn't take anything. No savings. No house. Just disappeared. Lila looked up. My mom worked 2 jobs. I started mowing lawns at 12. By 16, I promised myself I'd never depend on anyone. Ever. His voice was steady. His hands were not. I built everything so no one could pull the rug out from under me again. She saw it clearly now. This wasn't about money. It was about control. And finding out you come from more power than I'll ever have. He swallowed. It makes me feel like I'm that kid again. Small. Replaceable. You were never replaceable, she said softly. You can't know that. I chose you. But you didn't trust me with the truth. Her shoulders dropped. You're right. That admission hung in the air. No defense. No excuse. just truth. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The heater clicked on in the background. Car passed on the distant road. "I'm scared," she said finally. "Of what?" "That you love being powerful more than you love being close." That hit hard, because part of him knew it had been true. Late nights at the office, missed holidays, Thanksgiving dinners in Manhattan where he checked emails between bites of turkey. "I thought providing was loving," he said. "Providing isn't the same as showing up." He felt the weight of that, felt every dinner he rushed through, every conversation cut short. "I don't know how to slow down," he admitted. "You don't have to become someone else," she said. "You just have to let me in." Tears filled her eyes now, but she didn't hide them. "I felt invisible, Ethan. Not because of money. Because you stopped looking at me like I mattered." The words cracked something open. He moved to sit beside her this time, close enough that their knees touched. "I never stopped loving you," he said. "But you stopped fighting for me." He closed his eyes, because that was true too. For a long moment, there was no dialogue. Just breathing. Just space. Ethan looked around the small living room. The framed photo on the wall of Lila at 16. Standing alone on a beach in California. Wind in her hair. Determined eyes. He imagined her leaving her father's world. Walking away from jets and wealth. Starting over in a tiny dorm room somewhere in Boston. Working at that coffee shop. Choosing normal. Choosing him. The image sat heavy in his chest. He thought about Ohio. About his mother crying quietly at the kitchen table. About promising himself he'd never feel powerless again. Two young adults. Both running from something. Both thinking strength meant silence. The room felt still. Thick with everything unsaid. Ethan reached for her hand. This time he didn't hesitate. Her fingers were cold. He held them anyway. No speech. No grand promise. Just contact. It lasted almost a full minute. The kind of minute that changes something small but real. "I need to ask you something," he said. "Okay. If I had known from the start, would you have stayed?" She answered without pause. "Yes." That surprised him. "Why?" "Because I didn't marry you for safety. I married you because when you looked at me, I felt chosen." His throat tightened. "When did that change?" he asked. "When you started looking past me." The truth didn't yell. It whispered, and that made it worse. Arthur knocked lightly on the doorframe before stepping inside. "I'll give you 2 minutes," he said calmly. Ethan stood. "This isn't your fight." Arthur nodded. "No, it isn't." He looked at his daughter. "Are you safe?" "Yes," she replied softly. Arthur's eyes moved back to Ethan. "She's stronger than you think," he said. Ethan met his gaze. "I'm starting to see that." Arthur left without another word. The door closed. Lila looked at Ethan carefully. "He's not your enemy." "I know. But your pride might be." There it was again. Pride. The quiet destroyer. Ethan exhaled slowly. "I don't want a divorce," he said. The words felt heavy. Real. Her breath caught. "Then why did you sign?" "Because I was scared of needing you more than you needed me." Tears slipped down her face now. "That's not love," she whispered. "That's fear." He nodded. "I know." They sat there, holding hands, both stripped of defenses. If the story means something to you, if you've ever let fear make decisions for you, stay with it. Sometimes the hardest truths are the ones that save us. Outside, the wind picked up. Waves hit the dock harder now. Storm rolling in. Ethan stood. "I need to fix something," he said. "What?" "Myself." She searched his face. "Does that mean you're staying?" He hesitated. "I don't know what that looks like yet." Her heart sank slightly, because healing without direction can still lead to goodbye. He walked toward the door, paused, turned back. "I love you," he said. The words were steady this time. No ego, no defense, just truth. She nodded, tears still falling. "I love you too." He stepped outside into the cold night air. The wind hit his face sharp and real. For the first time, he felt the full weight of what he could lose. And as thunder rolled faintly over the water, he understood something terrifying. Love doesn't survive on good intentions. It survives on choices, and he hadn't made his yet. The truth has a way of finding light, even when you've buried it in the dark. But the storm that was coming would force a choice neither of them were ready for. The storm hit Connecticut just after midnight. Rain slammed against the windows of the waterfront house. Wind shook the dock. The calm water from earlier turned wild and dark. Inside, Lila sat awake on the couch. Ethan had left an hour ago. He said he needed space to think. Space. The word felt heavier now. Her phone buzzed. A news alert. Financial Times. Caldwell Innovations delays major acquisition amid internal conflict. Her stomach dropped. She opened the article. Anonymous sources. Speculation. Mentions of Bennett Global Holdings. The story hinted at tension between two powerful families. Her father's name wasn't directly stated, but it was close enough. Her phone rang. "Dad," she answered. "You've seen it," Arthur said. "Yes. I didn't leak anything." "I know. But this will get worse," he continued. "If the divorce becomes public during this deal, it will look strategic. Ugly." Lila closed her eyes. "This isn't about strategy. It will be to the world." The rain hit harder. "What are you saying?" she asked quietly. "I'm saying you need to decide whether you're protecting your heart or preparing for war." The call ended. She stared at the dark window. For the first time, she wondered if loving Ethan meant stepping into a battle she never wanted. Back in Manhattan, Ethan stood alone in his office. The city outside was soaked in rain. Yellow taxis cut through wet streets. Times Square glowed in the distance. Daniel stood near the door. "This is bad timing," Daniel said. "Investors are nervous." "I know. Are you sure this isn't connected to your personal life?" Ethan didn't answer, because it was. He had signed divorce papers. Now the market smelled blood. "You need to show stability," Daniel pressed. "If there's anything going on with Bennett Global." "I can handle Bennett," Ethan snapped. "Can you handle losing her?" The question landed hard. Daniel stepped closer. "You built this company from nothing. Don't let ego burn it down." "This isn't ego." "Then what is it?" Ethan looked at the rain sliding down the glass. "It's fear." Daniel softened. "Of what?" "Of not being enough." The room went quiet. "You are enough," Daniel said. "Unless you convince yourself you're not." At 2:13 a.m., Ethan's phone lit up. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. He didn't. "Ethan Caldwell." "It's Lila." Her voice was steady but thin. "Are you okay?" he asked immediately. "Have you seen the news?" "Yes." "Is this because of us?" He paused. "Yes." Silence on the line. "I never wanted to hurt your company," she whispered. "You didn't." "I feel like I did." "You didn't," he repeated. Thunder rolled through Manhattan. "Ethan," she said carefully, "if staying with me puts everything you built at risk, you can let me go." The words felt like a knife. "Don't say that. I don't want to be the reason your empire cracks." He laughed softly, not amused, just tired. "You're not a crack. You're the only thing in my life that isn't built on pressure." "Then why does loving me feel like pressure?" He didn't have an answer. Because sometimes love exposes the weakest parts of you, and that exposure feels like danger. The next morning, headlines spread faster. CNBC, Bloomberg, New York Post. Photos of Ethan leaving the Greenwich property. Speculation about a split between two powerful families. Stocks dipped. Board members demanded clarity. By noon, Ethan was called into an emergency meeting. "You need to issue a statement," one board member said. "About what?" "About your marriage." Ethan felt heat rise in his chest. "My marriage is not a public asset. It is if it affects shareholder confidence." There it was. The cost. Stay silent and risk the company. Speak up and risk Lila. He thought about her sitting by the water last night. About the way she said, "If staying with me puts everything at risk." He thought about signing those papers. About choosing control over connection. and suddenly he felt sick. "I won't drag her into this," he said firmly. "Then you need to finalize the divorce quickly," another board member replied. "Show separation. Protect the brand." The words echoed. Protect the brand. As if love were a liability. Ethan stood slowly. "You're asking me to end my marriage for optics. We're asking you to protect the company." He looked around the room. Mahogany table. City skyline. Men and women in tailored suits. Everything he fought for. Everything he dreamed of. And yet, it felt empty without her. He left the meeting without answering. Outside, the rain had stopped. The air smelled like wet pavement and exhaust. He walked alone down Fifth Avenue. No driver. No umbrella. Just noise. Tourists rushed past. A street vendor sold hot dogs near Rockefeller Center. Life moved on, unaware that his world was splitting. His phone buzzed again. A text from Lila. "I'm going back to Manhattan. We need to talk in person." His chest tightened. Was this it? Was she choosing to walk away before he could decide? He typed back, "I'll be there." That evening, the penthouse felt unfamiliar. Boxes sat near the wall. Not packed fully. Just ready. Lila stood by the window again. Just like before. Snow was gone now. The city was clear. Sharp. "You came," she said softly. "Of course." She turned. "I can't do this halfway anymore." He swallowed. "I know. My father offered to handle the media." Quietly. "And I told him no." He searched her face. "Why?" "Because I don't want my marriage fixed by money." The words hit him deep. "This has to be your choice," she continued. "Not the boards. Not the markets. Yours." He stepped closer. "They're asking me to finalize it," he admitted. Her face fell slightly, but she held steady. "And what do you want?" He opened his mouth. Closed it. The silence stretched. Heavy. Real. "I want you," he said finally. "But?" she asked. The single word broke him. Because there was still a but. "I'm scared," he said. "If this blows up publicly, it could cost thousands of jobs. Years of work. And if you let me go?" she asked quietly. He looked at her. Truly looked. It would cost him everything that mattered. The storm outside had passed. But inside, this was the breaking point. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes it's just the beginning of goodbye. Have you ever lost someone because you were too afraid to fight? Comment below. And as they stood there in the quiet penthouse, one choice away from forever, neither of them knew who would move first. The silence in the penthouse felt louder than any storm. New York moved below them. Car horns. Distant sirens. Life going on like nothing was breaking upstairs. Lila stood near the window. Ethan stood a few feet away. One choice between them. "I don't want to lose you," he said again. "Then don't," she replied softly. "It's not that simple." "It is," she said. "It's just not easy." He let out a slow breath. "You're asking me to risk everything." "No," she said gently. "I'm asking you to decide what everything is." That landed. Because for years everything meant market share, expansion, headlines, net worth. But now, everything had her face, her voice, her hand in his on that dock. "I've spent my whole life making sure no one could take anything from me," he said. "And in the process," she whispered, "you're giving me away." The truth hurt, but it cleared the air. The next morning, Ethan didn't go to the office. For the first time in years, he called in and said he wouldn't be there. Daniel showed up at the penthouse instead. "You sure about this?" Daniel asked quietly. "No," Ethan admitted. "But I'm sure about her." Daniel nodded once. "The board won't like it." "They don't have to." Daniel studied him. "This could cost you." "I know." "And if it does?" Ethan looked toward the hallway where Lila was packing a small overnight bag. Not leaving, just preparing in case. "If it does," he said slowly, "at least I'll know I chose something real." Daniel gave a small smile. "That's the first thing you've said in weeks that sounds like you." Later that afternoon, Ethan requested an emergency board meeting. In person. Not virtual. Not through lawyers. In person. The conference room felt colder than usual. Manhattan skyline stretching behind glass walls. American flags near the corner. Framed awards lining the hallway outside. The board members looked tense. "You've seen the headlines," one began. "Yes," Ethan replied. "Then you understand the urgency." "I do." He stood at the head of the table. For a moment he said nothing, just looked at the company logo etched into the wall, the symbol he built from scratch. Then he spoke. "My marriage is not a liability." Silence. "I signed divorce papers out of fear, not strategy." A few eyebrows lifted. "I grew up believing control was survival. I thought if I could manage every outcome, I'd never be abandoned again." He paused. "That mindset built this company, but it's destroying my life." No one interrupted. "If choosing my wife creates volatility in the short term, we'll manage it. That's what we do. But I will not end my marriage to make investors comfortable." The room felt still. One board member leaned forward. "Are you prepared for the consequences?" "Yes." "What if Bennett Global pulls funding? Then we adapt. What if the stock drops? It will recover. And if it doesn't?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "Then at least I didn't sell my personal life to protect a quarterly report." Silence stretched across the table. Heavy. Real. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't defensive. He was calm. Certain. After a long moment, the oldest board member spoke. "Stability doesn't come from pretending nothing is wrong," she said quietly. "It comes from leadership." She looked at Ethan. "For the first time this week, you sound like a leader." The tension in the room shifted. Not gone, but different. That evening, Ethan didn't rush home. He walked from Midtown down to the Lower East Side, past diners and bodegas, past couples arguing softly on sidewalks, past a church with its doors open for evening service. He stepped inside, not because he was religious, but because he needed quiet. He sat in the back pew. No phone, no noise, just space. For nearly 3 minutes he said nothing, did nothing, just breathed. He thought about Ohio, about his mother working late, about promising himself he'd never be powerless. He thought about Lila leaving behind a trillion-dollar world just to feel normal. He thought about the doc, her cold hands in his, her saying, "I needed you to be strong enough to love me." He understood now. Strength wasn't control. It was risk. When he finally stood up, something in him felt settled. Not fearless, but clear. Back at the penthouse, Lila was sitting on the kitchen counter, scrolling her phone without really reading anything. The door opened. She looked up. His eyes were different. "What happened?" she asked quietly. "I told the board I'm not divorcing you." Her breath caught. "You what?" "I told them if there are consequences, I'll handle them." She stepped down from the counter. "You're sure?" "No," he said honestly. "But I'm choosing you anyway." Tears filled her eyes. He walked closer. "I don't want to compete with your father. I don't want to prove I'm stronger. I just want to build something with you that isn't based on fear." She searched his face. For doubt. For hesitation. There was none. "Why now?" she whispered. "Because losing you would cost more than any stock drop." The words were simple, but they carried weight. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out the signed divorce papers. He looked at them for a second, then tore them in half. The sound was sharp in the quiet kitchen. Not dramatic, just final. Lila covered her mouth as tears spilled over. He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her. This time, there was no hesitation, no pride, just hold. Outside, the city lights flickered on as evening settled over New York. For the first time in weeks, the tension in his chest eased. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing love anyway. But one conversation still remained. And until her father heard the decision from Ethan himself, the future would remain uncertain. The next morning felt different. Not perfect, not easy, but lighter. New York woke up under a clear blue sky. The streets below the penthouse were loud again. Delivery trucks, taxi horns, someone yelling for coffee on the corner. Inside, Ethan stood at the kitchen counter making breakfast. Burning it slightly, Lila leaned against the doorway watching him. "You're not good at that," she said gently. "I'm aware." He scraped the pan and tried again. Small things, normal things, felt new. After everything that broke, normal felt sacred. "We still have to talk to him," she said. "I know." Arthur Bennett was in Manhattan for meetings, staying at the plaza near Central Park. Ethan insisted they go together, not as rivals, not as businessmen, as husband and wife. The lobby of the plaza was quiet, polished, American old-school wealth at its finest. Chandeliers, marble floors, tourists taking photos near the entrance. Arthur sat in a private lounge area. When he saw them walk in side by side, he stood. His eyes went first to Lila. "Are you all right?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "We are." Arthur looked at Ethan. "Well?" Ethan didn't waste time. "I'm not divorcing your daughter." Arthur's expression didn't change, but something softened in his eyes. "The board?" he asked. "I told them the truth. And the acquisition? We'll handle it cleanly. No games." Arthur studied him carefully. "You understand that staying married to her may cost you?" "Yes." "And you're prepared for that?" Ethan stepped closer to Lila. Not possessive, just present. "I almost lost her because I was afraid of not being the biggest man in the room," he said. "I won't make that mistake again." Arthur was quiet for a long moment. "You remind me of myself at your age," he said finally. "That's not a compliment, is it?" Ethan replied. Arthur gave the smallest smile. "No, it isn't." Silence lingered. Then Arthur walked toward his daughter. "If he hurts you again," he said softly, "I won't be so patient." Lila smiled faintly. "I know." Arthur extended his hand to Ethan. Not as a threat, as respect. Ethan shook it. Firm. Equal. For the first time, there was no competition in the room. Just clarity. Weeks passed. The headlines cooled. The acquisition went through with revised terms. Transparent. Clean. No secret power plays. Stocks dipped. Then stabilized. Investors moved on. Because markets always do. But inside their home, something had shifted deeper. Ethan started leaving the office earlier. Not every night, but more often. He missed one meeting to attend a charity event Lila cared about in Brooklyn. A small community center fundraiser. No cameras. No press. Just people. "You don't have to stay long," she whispered as they stood near folding tables and paper banners. "I want to," he said, and he meant it. He listened as she spoke with teachers, with parents, with kids who needed scholarships. He saw her light up, not as a billionaire's daughter, not as a CEO's wife, as herself. Later that night, driving back through the Queens Midtown Tunnel, he reached over and took her hand. No hesitation. She squeezed back. "Call back. Doc." Cold hands. This time, she didn't feel like she was slipping away. One Sunday, they drove upstate. No security. No press. Just a quiet road lined with trees. They stopped at a small diner near the Hudson River. Red booths. Coffee refills every 5 minutes. Country music playing softly overhead. Ethan laughed as Lila stole fries from his plate. "You've always done that," he said. "Because you never finished them." They sat there longer than needed. No rush. No pressure. Outside, an American flag fluttered near the entrance. Simple. Steady. He realized something then. Power isn't loud. It's consistent. And love isn't proven in grand gestures. It's proven in showing up again and again. That night back in Manhattan, they stood on the balcony together. The same place where he once chose silence. The city lights stretched endlessly before them. "I was wrong," he said quietly. "About what?" "Thinking love meant control." She leaned into him. "I was wrong too." "About what?" "Thinking silence would protect us." They stood there without speaking for a while. The air was cool but not cold. Comfortable. Safe. He turned to her. "There's something else." She looked up. "I don't want to compete with your father," he said. But I also don't want secrets between us ever again. No more secrets, she agreed. None. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, the same way he did on the dock. But this time there was no fear behind it. Just certainty. If you've stayed with this story, it's because you know something real when you feel it. Not the perfect kind, the fought-for kind. And that kind of love deserves to be witnessed. Months later, at a 4th of July barbecue on that same Connecticut property, things felt different. Arthur stood near the grill arguing about baseball with Daniel. Kids from the neighborhood ran across the lawn with sparklers. Lila leaned against Ethan as fireworks burst over the water. Red, white, blue, bright against the night sky. You ever think we'd be here? She asked. No, he admitted. Me neither. He looked at her. Really looked. Not past her. Not through her. Her. I'm glad we didn't quit, he said. Me too. Fireworks reflected in her eyes. He felt something settle inside him fully for the first time. Not ambition. Not pressure. Peace. He slipped his hand into hers. The same gesture. New meaning. She didn't let go. And neither did he. Do you believe some people are worth the wait? Drop a heart in the comments if this story hit you. Because sometimes love doesn't arrive loudly. Sometimes it hides behind pride. Sometimes it waits behind fear. But when two people choose courage over ego, they don't just find each other. They find home. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.